Chapter 1. System Activation. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The Spirit Valley. An old man in a dark Taoist robe tried to float in the air. When he could see the entire Spirit Valley, he finally stopped and stood in the air with his hands behind his back. He looked at the people who were cultivating hard and nodded. Everyone, stop. I'll make an announcement. The Outer Sect Disciple Assessment will begin at the end of this month. Those who pass will be directly promoted to Inner Sect Disciples. Those who do not pass will be expelled from the sect. I hope that everyone will make good use of their time to cultivate and strive to shine in this assessment. The voice spread in all directions and finally reached the ears of everyone in the valley. As soon as he finished speaking, the old man's figure disappeared in the air, as if no one had ever been there. What's the situation? The Outer Sect disciples who were cultivating all looked up when they heard the sound. However, they did not see anyone. He didn't know where the voice came from. There's an assessment this month. After asking around, he found out that it was an elder who had told him. In a short while, a few people immediately gathered together and started discussing. No, I'm only at the 4th layer of the Qi cultivation. You're not bad, I'm only at the peak of the 3rd layer. Alas, I won't be expelled from the sect, right? What's there to be afraid of? There's still Zhou Yun at the bottom. That's right, he's only at 1st layer of Qi cultivation. I'm at the 2nd layer of Qi cultivation, what have I got to be afraid of? Zhou Yun also heard the news at this time. He laughed bitterly in his heart. Have they decided to lay off the staff? It seems that the spiritual Qi in this world is really not enough. For some unknown reason, the spiritual Qi in this world had started to decline 1,000 years ago. It became thinner and thinner. In the past 1,000 years, countless spiritual springs had dried up due to the dissipation of spiritual Qi. Many powerful sects that relied on the spiritual mountains and spiritual springs were also destroyed. There were even some places where the spiritual Qi was thin to begin with. The spiritual Qi completely dissipated, and they were reduced to ordinary soil. The resources of the entire cultivation world were becoming more and more scarce. As a result, the various sects became at daggers drawn. They all started to fight for resources. Many forces would not hesitate to fight for a bit of cultivation resources. In the past few decades, the entire immortal cultivation world had been in a state of chaos. Countless powerful forces were reduced to ashes. Later on, the various sects realized that it was not a good idea to continue fighting like this. They could only find another way out. In the end, everyone unanimously decided to fire the sect's outer disciples to reduce the pressure of the shortage of spiritual Qi. This was the only method the sects could think of. By reducing the unnecessary consumption of immortal cultivation resources, they could slow down the rate of spiritual Qi depletion. As a result, the major sects began to lay off disciples. It was only now that the Spirit Valley had finally decided to lay off members. As soon as the news of the dismissal was announced, some people in the Spirit Valley were happy and some were sad. The Inner Sect disciples were naturally delighted. Many of the Inner Court disciples gloated when they heard the news. This year's Outer Sect disciple examination will definitely be very exciting. Who knows, there might be quite a number of people who will risk their lives. It's good to see more blood. They teased him with a relaxed expression. This was because they didn't need to take the test and could still watch the show. Moreover, reducing the number of outer disciples was equivalent to increasing their cultivation resources. As early as 100 years ago, there was news that the Spirit Valley was going to lay off disciples. At that time, they were still Outer Sect disciples, so naturally, they had been in a state of apprehension for many years. Only when he broke through to the Qi cultivation stage and became an Inner Sect disciple did he finally relax. And the news of the layoff was not necessarily good for the current outer disciples. Especially for Zhou Yun, who was at the bottom of the outer disciples, it was definitely bad news. Zhou Yun had entered the sect for a year. The students in the same batch as him had already broken through to fourth or fifth layer of chi cultivation. They all joined the various instructors. He was the only one who had not been able to break through. He was also an outer sect disciple, so he naturally had to participate in the outer sect disciple assessment this time. And among the outer sect disciples, his cultivation realm was the lowest. First layer of chi cultivation. The juniors who entered the sect a stage later than him had basically broken through to second or third layer. In other words, he was probably the cultivator with the lowest realm in the entire Spirit Valley. So, if everything went as planned, he would definitely be first on the layoff list. There's less than a month left. If I can't break through by then, I'll be in trouble. Zhou Yun could feel the weak spiritual chi in his body and he smiled bitterly. Cultivation was already very difficult. He was afraid that he would never be able to break through in his life. If one wanted to step onto the immortal path, cultivation resources were indispensable. In terms of wealth, companion, law, land, wealth referred to spirit stones. In this era where spiritual chi was scarce. Without spirit stones, it would be impossible to break through just by absorbing spiritual chi. Originally, cultivating in the Spirit Valley would give them some leftover cultivation resources. If he left Spirit Valley, he would not even have these scraps. At that time, there would be no more hope. Even though he had already expected this outcome. After all, it wasn't just a year or two since the Spirit Valley wanted to lay off employees. It was already known to everyone. However, he still felt a little unwilling in his heart. He had been cultivating all this time, but he was stuck at the first stage. He had been unable to advance an inch. Could it be because of transmigration? Zhou Yun kept thinking about the reason why he could not break through. Other than transmigration, he could not think of any other possibility. He was originally an office worker on planet Bluect, and when he woke up, he found himself in this place. He had even transmigrated to a host with the same name as him. When he first came, he was already at the first level of essence. Now, a year had passed, and he was still at the first level. It should be because I transmigrated, so I can't absorb the spiritual chi here. Zhou Yun recalled the students who were originally in the same batch as him but had now entered the tutelage of their respective instructors. He sighed in his heart. He was clearly the most hardworking student in his batch. However, his cultivation level was the lowest in the sect. Even some of the juniors slowly turned from admiration to disdain. Now that he was facing the risk of being laid off, he was very unwilling. It wasn't easy to experience such an exciting life. How could he be immortal again? Just as he was in despair, an emotionless voice sounded in his mind. The God.level sudden enlightenment system has awakened. Zhou Yun suddenly raised his head. System. His originally disappointed eyes were immediately filled with hope. Then, he was a little uncertain. The system is a God.level enlightenment system. Would you like to bind it? The system's cold voice was like the sound of nature in his ears. Having read all kinds of novels, he naturally knew the weight of this sentence in his mind. Zhou Yun's heart, which had been tensed up for many years, finally relaxed at this moment. His plug.in was in his account. Chapter 2. Infinite Enlightenment. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The God.tier enlightenment system. Zhou Yun thought out loud. He came back to his senses and his eyes narrowed slightly. There was actually a system. He had thought that after transmigrating for so long, he would not have any cheats. After all, the main characters of the novels he read in the past had all received their cheats as soon as they had transmigrated. How could there be a main character like him that only received his cheat a year after his transmigration? Zhou Yun's heart ached as he recalled his experiences over the past year. He worked harder than everyone else, but he didn't get anything in return. Yet, when he wanted to give up now, the system came. What a joke. He murmured, based on the name alone, this system seems to be very powerful. Zhou Yun cast these thoughts to the back of his mind and began to study the system. Just as he was deep in thought, the system's voice sounded again. It changed from a cold mechanical voice to a cute female voice. "Handsome master, this system doesn't just look powerful. This system has the most potential for growth and is the most powerful system in the world." Hearing this female voice, Zhou Yun's mood immediately improved. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, then he said to the system, "Then, can you introduce yourself?" "Yes, master. This is the God-tier enlightenment system. Its function is very simple. It can help master enter the state of enlightenment at any time and place." The cute female voice continued, "No matter what master is doing, with just a thought, you can enter the desired state as you please." Zhou Yun questioned, "I can attain enlightenment anytime, anywhere. How is that possible?" Hearing the system's introduction, Zhou Yun immediately held his breath. He revealed a look of disbelief. He had cultivated in Spirit Valley for a long time, so he naturally knew the mysteries of enlightenment. Enlightenment referred to instant acquisition of a skill. This kind of thing usually occurred to powerful beings. A moment of enlightenment meant that one had mastered a certain power. Their strength would be greatly increased. Small figures like him would not dare to dream of such things. Entering a state of enlightenment was something that could only be encountered by chance. Most people would not even encounter it once in their entire lives. A single moment of enlightenment could increase one's strength tremendously. If Zhou Yun could enter a state of enlightenment at any given time, wouldn't he be able to become stronger any time he wanted? This was too good to be true. As he thought of this, he calmed his wildly beating heart and said, "I accept the system." The female voice responded, "All right. Binding the God-tier enlightenment system to you." Just as the system finished speaking, Zhou Yun felt a cool and refreshing sensation sweep over his body and then his mind. He quickly closed his eyes to indulge in this state. A mysterious sound made him feel comfortable. 10 minutes later, the sensation he experienced slowly wore off. "Are you done? Is that it?" Zhou Yun opened his eyes and looked around, but he did not notice any changes. The system's cute voice sounded again, saying, "Yes, master. The God-tier enlightenment system has been bound to you. From now on, you can enter the state of enlightenment with just a thought." "I don't feel any different." Zhou Yun tried to circulate his spiritual qi, but his sealed meridians were still sealed. There was no change at all. The system suggested, "Master, you can try cultivating a cultivation technique." Zhou Yun did so without any hesitation. He immediately sat down cross-legged and tried cultivating the spiritual qi mantra. This was the basic cultivation technique that all outer sect disciples of Spirit Valley practiced. It was mainly used to absorb spiritual qi and increase one's cultivation level. Although the spiritual qi around him now was thin, it was not to the point where there was none at all. By relying on this cultivation technique, he could still absorb some of the spiritual qi around him for cultivation. The majority of the outer sect disciples also relied on this cultivation technique to cultivate to the third or fourth layer of qi cultivation. After sitting down, Zhou Yun closed his eyes and started cultivating. As soon as he started, the mistakes he made when he first started cultivating immediately surfaced in his mind. Then, he was enlightened to the correct cultivation method. He followed the method that appeared in his mind and started to cultivate again step by step. He whispered, "I need to slow down at the beginning and keep it going continuously." As soon as he activated the cultivation technique, he felt the spiritual qi around his body quickly circulate. His body also slowly emitted a mysterious light. Following the method in his mind, he thought out loud, "I need to find the pace here and be flexible to changes." In the process of enlightenment, he discovered that he had to cultivate according to the rhythm of the cultivation method. There was a rhythm to cultivation. This was something he had never thought of. However, cultivating at this pace felt extremely easy. Unknowingly, Zhou Yun had been engrossed in the rhythm of the technique. He didn't want to stop at all. In the past, cultivation was a torture. Now, he was enjoying it. From this, one could see how important it was to cultivate according to the rhythm of the cultivation technique. He reminded himself, slow down. I need to go even slower. Bang! A moment later, a slight muffled sound came from Zhou Yun's body. After that, his meridians, which felt like they had been blocked with iron blocks, actually loosened a little. However, he paid it no heed. Zhou Yun's consciousness had now entered an indescribable state. He was enjoying this wonderful cultivation process. He seemed to have forgotten everything around him. After a short while, it was as if something had broken. His already loose meridians were suddenly unobstructed. Then, the spiritual qi in the surroundings was quickly drawn into his body. His aura began to rise rapidly. Zhou Yun still did not care. At this moment, he didn't care about whether he had a breakthrough or not. He preferred engrossing himself in the rhythm of his cultivation. He exclaimed, I will push right through this point and then circulate the qi faster. He tirelessly followed the rhythm in his mind and cultivated, enjoying the process. He only had one thought going through his mind. This cultivation technique was too simple. It was as easy as ABC. It was so satisfying. He didn't want to stop cultivating. Is this still the same cultivation technique that I couldn't understand before this, no matter how hard I tried? Zhou Yun already knew the answer to this question. His previous cultivation attempts had always been straightforward. He had no idea that each cultivation technique had their own rhythms. When he attained enlightenment earlier, he circulated his qi according to the rhythm of the cultivation technique. Once he did so, he obtained an unexpected harvest. Previously, when he circulated his spiritual qi, he felt like he was carrying a person on his back, which made him extremely uncomfortable. Now, it was as if he was floating in the air, and he could use his qi effortlessly. Furthermore, the speed in which he circulated his qi was more than 5 times faster than before. It was much easier. It was so simple that it felt like cheating. No, this was cheating. He was blatantly cheating. Very quickly, he had already familiarized himself with the entire technique. He exclaimed, is this the feeling of cultivation? It's simply too good. Zhou Yun was enjoying the process of cultivation. Originally, he only had a rough grasp of the spiritual qi mantra. It was as if he had been memorizing it without understanding it. Now, he had a much deeper understanding of this cultivation technique. The process of cultivation was like singing a song. One had to grasp the rhythm. Songs were easy to sing and pleasant to hear. It was the same for cultivation. Some parts needed to be relaxed, some needed to be light, some needed to be rushed, some needed to be steady. By grasping the rhythm, he could do more with less. This kind of cultivation process was simply too pleasurable. He was addicted to it, and he didn't want to leave this state at all. Chapter 3. Worried about the assessment. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zhou Yun fell into a state of enlightenment and could not extricate himself from it. He had been subconsciously absorbing the spiritual qi around him. At this moment, his meridians were already full of spiritual qi, but he continued to absorb it tirelessly. It seemed that he was able to absorb it endlessly. His meridians swelled up from the endless absorption of spiritual qi. They were getting bigger and bigger. 15 minutes later. Bang! Boom! I've broken through. I've reached the second layer of qi cultivation. Zhou Yun was engrossed in his cultivation when a muffled sound came from his body. A moment later, he felt his meridians rapidly expand like an inflated balloon. In an instant, they had expanded to about twice their original size. Then, they began to absorb spiritual qi madly. The spiritual qi that was originally flowing around Zhou Yun was now rushing into his body like crazy. At this moment, a small vortex appeared beside him. This was a vortex formed by the rapid circulation of spirit qi. Zhou Yun felt the spiritual energy in his body, his eyes filled with surprise. I didn't expect to break through in just 15 minutes. He couldn't believe that he had reached the second layer of qi cultivation. This was a realm that he had not reached after cultivating for 1 solid year. Now, however, the 15-minute cultivation had actually surpassed 1 year of effort. Such an effect was too awesome. No wonder this system is said to possess the greatest potential and power in the world. Zhou Yun's heart was beating wildly. It was difficult for him to calm down. He was so excited about the system's power. With such a powerful system, there was no need to worry about being laid off. When he first came here, he wanted to be like the main characters in all kinds of novels, heroic and invincible. He had also set some small goals. He decided to defeat the blue dragon and the white tiger, welcome the empress, marry the goddess, suppress a region, and open the heavenly door with 1 sword. However, after experiencing a year of failure, he gradually lost his ambition. At this moment, he was so full of hope again. The small goals that he had set before were achievable. With the existence of the Enlightenment system, he was becoming stronger at any time. Zhou Yun turned his attention away from the system and continued his enlightenment. I'll continue cultivating. I must become strong enough, or I'll get laid off. Zhou Yun suppressed the excitement in his heart and continued to cultivate. Although he had broken through to the second layer of qi cultivation, it was not enough for him to get a good result in the assessment. He couldn't even pass the test. For now, his strength was not enough to guarantee that he would not get laid off. After all, he was just a beginner. There were many outer sect disciples who had reached the second layer of qi cultivation. He didn't want to be driven out of Spirit Valley. He still needed to break through to a higher level. The more resources he had, the smoother his way to cultivation would be. Although he already had the godlike enlightenment system, all kinds of cultivation resources were also indispensable during the cultivation process. Moreover, cultivating with the help of a sect like the Spirit Valley would be much easier than cultivating alone. After all, this was an era where spiritual qi was rare. No matter how powerful a cultivator was, he could not possess the cultivation resources of a sect. Just like that, Zhou Yun sat cross-legged on the spot, totally motionless. He sat there from dawn to dusk, and then from dusk to dawn. During this time, there was a series of explosions and shattering sounds coming from his body from time to time. Those were the signals for a breakthrough. However, Zhou Yun did not seem to notice them. He did not stop either. The joy of breakthrough was no match for that of cultivation. He had been immersed in the joy of enlightenment all day long. Besides, during the process of enlightenment, he also discovered many defects in the cultivation technique. This cultivation technique is incomplete. It shouldn't just be a technique for absorbing spiritual qi. It definitely has other uses. For example, when the spiritual qi entered his body just now, he felt that he could manipulate it as he wished. He could even control the spiritual qi. Can spiritual qi be turned into weapons? Thinking of this, Zhou Yun felt the spiritual qi in his body surge rapidly. Then, he flicked his finger. The spiritual qi instantly turned into a sharp sword. Zhou Yun held the sword and felt it carefully. He felt as if he was holding a real sword, but he also felt like the wind was running around in his palm. Zhou Yun casually flicked his hand, and the sword formed by spiritual qi shot out instantly. Swoosh! With the sound of a gust of wind, an ancient tree not far away was directly pierced through. That's it. Zhou Yun took a deep breath, his eyes shining with joy. This cultivation technique isn't perfect. There are some parts where the cultivation paces need to be improved. Moreover, it shouldn't just be a cultivation technique. It can be improved into an offensive technique. After a period of enlightenment, he continued his breakthrough from the second layer of qi cultivation. He had directly broken through to the fifth layer of qi cultivation. Moreover, he also made some changes to this cultivation technique. After the modification, the cultivation technique was one level higher than the first time he had a moment of enlightenment. With the help of the modified cultivation technique, his cultivation speed doubled again. It allowed him to break through to the 5th layer of Qi cultivation in just one day. After breaking through to the 5th layer of Qi cultivation, Zhou Yun stopped. He did want to continue cultivating, but he had encountered some difficulties. This body's innate ability is not very good. Without the help of a large number of pills, it is impossible to break through to the foundation establishment stage, let alone the golden core stage. Although the problem of cultivation had been solved, the problem of innate ability was indeed difficult to solve. Zhou Yun picked up a cup of tea, trying to wash away the worry in his heart. At this moment, 3 or 4 young men in green Taoist robes flew past him. "Well, isn't that our classmate, Zhou Yun? Let's go down and take a look." When they passed by Zhou Yun's from above his head, they suddenly stopped. One of them said this in a playful tone. Then, without waiting for the other's agreement, he flicked his sleeve and flew toward Zhou Yun. This person was called Qin Xiu. His strength had already reached the great perfection of Qi cultivation, and he was the one with the highest cultivation level among them. The other 3 people looked at Zhou Yun with a hint of disdain in their eyes. Finally, they all landed in front of Zhou Yun. Zhou Yun lifted the cup of tea and took a sip. Right before he put it down, he saw 4 people landing in front of him. With just a glance, he recognized the 4 people in front of him. They were the disciples who joined the sect at the same time as him. Qin Xiu, who was the first to land, was the strongest among them. Because he had reached the great perfection of Qi cultivation, he was promoted to an inner sect disciple a month ago. He didn't need to participate in the outer sect disciple assessment this time. He only needed to focus on breaking through the foundation establishment stage. The rest of them seemed to be his lackeys. They stood around Qin Xiu like a bunch of guards. "What are you guys doing here?" Zhou Yun put down his teacup and asked them in confusion. These few people were his classmates from the same period. However, he wasn't very familiar with him. He couldn't even recall their names if he didn't think carefully. He couldn't figure out what they were doing here. When Qin Xiu saw Zhou Yun, a mocking expression appeared on his face at once. He had clearly seen Zhou Yun's worried expression just now. He thought that Zhou Yun must be worried about the assessment. Thinking of what happened in the past, Qin Xiu couldn't help but sneer. Chapter 4. Offending a female student. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When faced with Zhou Yun's question, a look of disdain appeared on their faces. They were too lazy to answer him. They were cultivators at the 4th or the 5th layer of Qi cultivation. Naturally, the outer sect disciple assessment posed no difficulty to them at all. As for Zhou Yun, he had not made any progress even after cultivating for a year. He was destined to be expelled from the sect. They were not from the same world, so they naturally did not want to answer Zhou Yun's question. Qin Xiu observed their expressions and felt very satisfied. In the past, Zhou Yun had attracted the attention of the female students in class because of his handsome face and extraordinary temperament. On top of that, he was the most hard-working student in his batch. Even the instructor at the time praised him repeatedly. At that time, he had also been overshadowed by Zhou Yun. Whenever Qin Xiu recalled this, the fire of jealousy in his heart immediately flared out. Now, when he saw Zhou Yun, who was still worried about the outer sect disciple assessment, he couldn't help but feel a burst of pleasure. He couldn't hide the gloating in his heart. It was really difficult for other people to take Zhou Yun seriously. Even Jiang Qian, the only female student among them, had a complicated expression on her face when she saw Zhou Yun. She was still attracted to him when she saw his face. However, she quickly regained her senses and no longer stared at him in a daze. They were destined to be people from 2 different worlds. It was impossible for them to interact anymore. Zhou Yun's temperament was indisputable. In the past, all the female students, including herself, had secretly developed feelings for him. They fantasized about becoming cultivation companions with Zhou Yun in the future. However, the current Zhou Yun had long lost his charm due to reality. Even though his face was still as attractive as ever, he was no longer as eye-catching as before. No matter how brilliant Zhou Yun had been, he could not withstand the test of time. Cultivation was all about talent, not just tenacity. It certainly did not depend on his good looks. Old classmate, there's less than a month before the outer sect disciple assessment. How's your cultivation progressing? Qin Xiu revealed a look of concern as he popped the question, as though he really cared for Zhou Yun. Upon hearing Qin Xiu's words, Zhou Yun immediately understood the purpose of their visit. They were here to mock him and make fun of him. Perhaps it was because he had been in the limelight last year, which made his old classmates jealous. In the past year, he had been stuck at the first layer of qi cultivation because his training had not been progressing smoothly. There were often people who came over to laugh at him. He was already used to it. Now that Spirit Valley had decided to lay off some cultivators, his old classmates would naturally come over to laugh at him. In their eyes, he would be expelled from the sect next month and become immortal. If they didn't come and mock him now, they might not have the chance to do so again. If it was any other time, Zhou Yun might have entertained them. However, he was currently worried about the matter of cultivation resources and did not have the time to talk nonsense with them. He said, "My cultivation is progressing well. You don't need to worry about me. If there's nothing else, please be on your way." After hearing Zhou Yun's words, Qin Xiu's lackeys immediately lashed out in anger. "We're just concerned about you. What's with your attitude? The sect will be laying off some cultivators after this assessment. Aren't you worried?" In their eyes, Zhou Yun did not know what was good for him. Qin Xiu was an inner sect disciple. Moreover, he had reached the great perfection of qi cultivation. Zhou Yun was a nobody at the first layer of qi cultivation, and he was about to be expelled from the sect. People like him were not even qualified to talk to inner sect disciples. Qin Xiu was speaking to him as his old classmate, and he actually talked to Qin Xiu with such a tone. If any other cultivator at the first layer of qi cultivation dared to speak to experts at the great perfection of qi cultivation like this, they would probably be killed with a single palm strike. They condemned Zhou Yun. Looking at his lackeys desperately licking his boots, Qin Xiu smiled in satisfaction and continued, "I heard that the sect will lay off some cultivators after the assessment. Are you confident that you will not be expelled?" Seeing that Zhou Yun didn't respond, Qin Xiu quickly added, "If you really can't pass the assessment, you can come over to my side. I'll arrange a cleaning job for you. It's easy and comfortable, and you don't have to take the assessment. How about it?" Qin Xiu's expression of concern was very on point. If one didn't catch his mocking tone, they would really think that he was looking out for Zhou Yun. Zhou Yun lamented internally, does he have to go to such ends to prove his existence? In any case, he's an expert who's about to reach the foundation establishment stage, and this is all there is to him. Zhou Yun didn't say anything, but he was secretly looking down on Qin Xiu in disdain. As soon as Qin Xiu finished speaking, the others quickly echoed. "That's right, Zhou Yun. Qin Xiu is an inner sect disciple. If you follow him, you won't have to take the assessment. Yeah, you're just going over to Qin Xiu's place to avoid the assessment. Qin Xiu won't actually make you do the cleaning. Of course. Besides, there's nothing much to clean in our sect. If you follow Qin Xiu, you might even be able to improve your own cultivation stage. Others don't even have the opportunity to be the servants of an inner sect disciple." Zhou Yun was speechless as he looked at the few people who were chattering. The helplessness he felt could not be greater. This was the first time he had seen someone so persistent in mocking him. He wondered how big a grudge they had against him. Seeing that Zhou Yun was silent, the discussion became even more lively. One of them even gestured profusely as he spoke. They had already planned out Zhou Yun's entire life. If a passerby saw this, they would think that a lunatic had escaped from an asylum. Zhou Yun picked up the teacup and took a sip. He was speechless as he looked at the people who were trying hard to persuade him to accept Qin Xiu's offer. He remained unmoved. The lackeys also felt a little embarrassed. They had been trying so hard to persuade him, yet he was still drinking tea. Wasn't he worried that he would be kicked out of the sect because he didn't pass the assessment? Did he not know the consequences of leaving the sect? Didn't he know how the great forces that relied on the spiritual spring disappeared? After immortals left the land of spiritual qi, their cultivation stages would decline. Zhou Yun seemed ungrateful to them. They had clearly given him a chance, but he did not cherish it. Was it worth it just for a moment's face? In their opinion, Zhou Yun was just being stubborn. Qin Xiu pretended to sigh in pity. The others felt the urge to mock him more. Just then, Jiang Qian couldn't help but say, "We're all in the same cohort. We don't want to see you being driven out of the sect. Isn't it better to clean up for your senior brother than to be driven out?" She looked at the person she used to love deeply and felt a little resentful that he had not lived up to her expectations. "Zhou Yun, think carefully." Jiang Qian, who had been silently standing at the side, felt compelled to speak up. Zhou Yun turned to look at her. He stared at Jiang Qian for a long time until her cheeks turned red. Then, he turned his head away. He thought to himself, "I don't recall offending any female students, have I?" Chapter 5. The whole world fell silent. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Upon hearing Jiang Qian's voice, Zhou Yun turned around with a look of confusion. Who was this person? Why did he feel like she had a deep hatred for him? He had not offended her, had he? Just as Zhou Yun was feeling puzzled, the other two people thought that Zhou Yun had been stunned by Jiang Qian's words. They hurriedly followed up with more verbal attacks. "Zhou Yun, don't be so stubborn. We're doing this for your own good. It's just cleaning, there's nothing to be ashamed of. In the future, you'll know that we are doing this for your own good. That's right, I can't fathom why you're still so stubborn. If you're not even willing to clean, then what's the point of pursuing immortality? Do you want to get kicked out of the sect and become immortal? How can you be trusted to handle huge responsibilities when you can't even clean a house? There is no gain without pain. Yeah, you might not know this, but if immortals can't absorb spiritual qi for a long time, their cultivation level will fall. In the end, they will really be reduced to mortals. That's right. Do you know how those big forces backed by the spiritual spring and spiritual mountain were destroyed? It's because of the depletion of the spiritual spring. Their overall strength dropped, which resulted in their destruction. Do you want to become an ordinary person? Do you want all your hard work to go to waste? Zhou Yun kept quiet. The few of them kept talking and he couldn't get in a word even if he wanted to. Looking at the few people who persisted in their ramblings, he even had a moment of doubt. Was he really wrong for not accepting Qin Xiu's offer? When he thought of this, he immediately shook his head and smiled. That had nothing to do with him. As expected, repeated lies created the illusion of truth. He looked indifferently at the people who were trying to persuade him. What the hell was this? They were running their mouths even though they just learned a few things about cultivation. These people didn't even have a good relationship with him. Why were they all so energetic today? I'm good at cultivating on my own, so you don't have to worry about me. Zhou Yun's eyes narrowed as he interrupted their speeches. What do you mean we don't have to worry about you? You're really... At this moment, a person emerged from the crowd. He was the second strongest person among them. His name was Ji Ha, and he was a cultivator at the 5th layer of Qi cultivation. Although there was still a big gap between his power level and Qin Xiu's, it was more than enough to pass the outer sect disciple assessment. When he saw Zhou Yun's attitude, he immediately stepped forward and prepared to ridicule him. It had been a year and Zhou Yun still hadn't broken through to the second layer of qi cultivation. Why was he so stubborn? It was just cleaning. How wronged could he feel? Shouldn't a cultivator at the first layer of qi cultivation work for a cultivator who achieved the great perfection of qi cultivation? Ji Ha was certain that he was right. He criticized Zhou Yun as he approached the ladder. He walked up to Zhou Yun and was about to drag him outside. Boom! Zhou Yun's body trembled and a huge amount of spiritual qi instantly gushed out from his body. The gushing of an air current could be heard, and Ji Ha, who had just reached Zhou Yun's side, was instantly sent flying. He only stopped after flying for 20 to 30 meters. The remaining 3 members, except Qin Xiu, were all blown away by this powerful airflow. They all used their full strength to resist in order to not be pushed further away. How is that possible? Their eyes widened in surprise after they stabilized their bodies. Everyone present was shocked. Ji Ha was a cultivator at the 5th layer of qi cultivation. How could Zhou Yun push him back? There was a difference of 4 layers between a 1st layer qi cultivation cultivator and a 5th layer qi cultivation cultivator. The path of immortal cultivation got tougher as the cultivators progressed. Under normal circumstances, even if Zhou Yun, who was at the 1st layer of qi cultivation, used all his strength to hit Ji Ha, the latter would still be unfazed. Ji Ha would at most feel a tingling sensation. It was impossible for him to receive any damage, let alone being pushed back more than 20 meters. Everyone was stunned. A 1st layer qi cultivation cultivator defeated a 5th layer qi cultivation cultivator. Were they hallucinating or had the world changed? Ji Ha was also dumbfounded. Earlier, he had sensed that Zhou Yun's body contained a power that was even stronger than his. Zhou Yun was at least at the 5th layer of qi cultivation. Ji Ha had a look of disbelief on his face. That's impossible. After he steadied himself, he carefully sensed the fluctuation of spiritual qi in this place. Judging from the spiritual qi fluctuation that Zhou Yun had just released, the former was even stronger than him. This discovery made Ji Ha even more surprised. He had met Zhou Yun 2 months ago. At that time, Zhou Yun was only at the 1st layer of qi cultivation. In just 2 short months, Zhou Yun had advanced to the 5th layer of qi cultivation, and was not weaker than him. How was this possible? You're at the 5th layer of qi cultivation. Ji Ha regained his senses and asked Zhou Yun. Hearing Ji Ha's words and without waiting for Zhou Yun's reply, everyone shook their heads. This was absolutely impossible. If Zhou Yun had the strength of a cultivator at the 5th layer of qi cultivation, would he still need to worry about the outer sect disciple assessment? They had clearly seen Zhou Yun's worried face when they first arrived. Moreover, they had just met Zhou Yun not long ago. At that time, he was clearly at the 1st layer of qi cultivation. They could not have been mistaken. Zhou Yun must have pushed Ji Ha away when the latter was not paying attention. It was impossible for Zhou Yun to have the strength of a 5th layer qi cultivation cultivator. They must be mistaken. No matter what, they would not believe it. It must have been an illusion. Qin Xiu didn't speak. At the moment, he was lost in thought. He was still a little shocked. Even though he was surprised that Zhou Yun was a 5th layer qi cultivation cultivator, there was something else that shocked him even more. The release of spiritual qi. This was an ability that could only be obtained at the foundation establishment stage. Just now, he clearly saw that Ji Ha had been pushed away by Zhou Yun's spiritual qi. Otherwise, even if Ji Ha was caught off guard, how could he have been pushed so far away when they were both at the same level? Here lies the problem. Zhou Yun was only a 5th layer qi cultivation cultivator. How could he release his spiritual qi? Qin Xiu was lost in his thoughts. Jiang Qian was also looking at Zhou Yun in shock. Her eyes were filled with guilt. As the only female student among them, right now, she already believed that Zhou Yun was at the 5th layer of qi cultivation. She had not expected Zhou Yun to be so powerful. He had been hiding his strength. She recalled how she had shouted at Zhou Yun earlier and could not help but feel guilty and angry at herself. Zhou Yun had no problem cultivating here alone. They were the ones who had barged in and wanted him to clean for Qin Xiu. They also ridiculed him with all sorts of mockery and sarcastic remarks. Now that she thought about it, Zhou Yun did not rebuke them just now because he couldn't be bothered to do so. Jiang Qian raised her head to look at Zhou Yun again. Only then did she realize that Zhou Yun had not changed at all. He was still as attractive as ever. They were the ones who had changed. They had become vain and calculative. Another person was still mumbling, "Impossible," over and over again. He really couldn't believe it. How did Zhou Yun, who was originally at the bottom among the outer sect disciples, suddenly reach the 5th layer of qi cultivation? He himself was only at the 4th layer of qi cultivation. He couldn't accept the feeling of being overtaken. This must be a mistake. It was not until a few minutes later that he finally woke up from his initial shock. However, he still did not believe that Zhou Yun had the strength of a 5th layer qi cultivation cultivator. His eyes were fixed on Zhou Yun. "I'm at the 5th stage of qi cultivation." Only then did Zhou Yun slowly speak. The spiritual qi around his body also began to circulate rapidly. In an instant, the strength of a 5th layer qi cultivation cultivator was fully displayed. At this moment, the entire world fell silent. Chapter 6. Fortuitous Encounter. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Before the others could come back to their senses, Zhou Yun had already disappeared into the distance. As this place where he had been cultivating had been disturbed, he no longer desired to stay here. He could only find another place. Not long after, Zhou Yun arrived at a secluded mountain forest. His body rose into the air and finally sat down cross-legged on a huge rock. After sitting down, he began to think about his next move. Now that he was already at the 5th layer of qi cultivation, he would have no problem dealing with the outer sect disciple assessment. However, the problem of his innate ability had not been solved yet. Previously, when he was cultivating, he had already discovered that his innate ability was extremely limited. His cultivation journey ahead would be very difficult and the upper limit of his cultivation would be low. Even though he had the system's assistance, his own innate ability would still limit his development. If he did not solve this problem, his future potential would be stunted. Zhou Yun sighed and took out a cloth bag he carried with him. Inside the bag were the pills and spiritual stones that Spirit Valley had given him. He lamented, "I'm dirt poor." The saying about scholars being poor and warriors being rich is not wrong. Zhou Yun looked at the shriveled cloth bag and could not bear to open it. He didn't even need to look in it to know that there wasn't much left. Since spiritual qi was scarce, the resources distributed to the disciples by Spirit Valley had also been reduced. In recent times, the allocation of resources to all disciples had been cut back. The allocation to the inner sect disciples had also been reduced by a third. As for the outer sect disciples, the reduction was even greater. Each outer sect disciple was originally given 1 spiritual stone plus 5 qi refining pills to assist in their cultivation. Now, that amount was directly halved, from the original 1 spiritual stone to half a spiritual stone per person. The number of qi refining pills had also been cut down to 3. The cultivation resources for the outer sect disciples became even more insufficient. Even a dog would pity me if it saw my resources. Helplessly, Zhou Yun opened the cloth bag. He had no choice. For his cultivation, pills and spiritual stones were essential. Without these cultivation resources, cultivation would only be half as effective. Furthermore, without pills to nourish his body, his cultivation speed would only slow down gradually. Zhou Yun composed himself. He opened the cloth bag with trembling hands and looked at the few remaining qi refining pills inside. The spiritual stones distributed to him had long been used up. The spiritual stones that could have supported his cultivation for half a month had been used up in just 7 days. Zhou Yun had no way to overcome this shortage. When he took out the pills, a faint medicinal fragrance immediately spread in the air. Although the number of pills was apparent at a glance, Zhou Yun counted them one by one. 1, 2, 3. That was all he had. There were only 3 in total. In addition to the 6 that he had previously accumulated, right now, Zhou Yun's entire net worth was only these 9 pills. Looking at these pills, Zhou Yun had a headache. Even if these pills were sold, they would be worth less than 3 spiritual stones. Normally, the absorption rate of spiritual qi from consuming the pills was higher than that of spiritual stones. However, the spiritual qi absorbed from spiritual stones was purer than that of pills. After all, one was natural while the other was refined. Now that Zhou Yun's strength had increased, his need for pills and cultivation resources had increased. When he was at the first layer of qi cultivation, the resources distributed by the sect were barely enough. Now that Zhou Yun was at the 5th layer of qi cultivation, his need for spiritual stones and pills was much greater than before. It was as though he was growing from a baby to an adult. As his strength increased, his appetite would also increase. Originally, 1 pill was enough to support him for almost a day of cultivating. Now, 1 pill was only enough to support his cultivation for 2 hours. These 9 pills added together were not even enough for him to cultivate for a day. This was not enough to satisfy his cultivation needs. What do I do? His poverty once again made Zhou Yun feel the difficulty of the times. I'm lacking in pills and spiritual stones. A man was only as good as his resources. Zhou Yun recalled these famous words and once again felt the pain he experienced at work in his previous life. Master, you can try refining pills. Can't you just refine some pills and trade them for spiritual stones? A cute female voice rang in his mind, interrupting Zhou Yun's train of thought. Of course I know that medicinal pills can be exchanged for spiritual stones. The problem is that I don't know how to. Just as Zhou Yun was about to retort the system, he suddenly stopped. That's right. He could refine pills. He had the God-tier enlightenment system, so he only needed to observe the process of alchemy in order to learn it. He could also read a few manuscripts about qi refining pills. Then, he would be able to produce them. Even producing higher-grade medicinal pills would not pose a problem to him. Zhou Yun slapped his forehead in revelation. I actually forgot to make use of such a useful cheat. How foolish of me. After some consideration, Zhou Yun finally decided to try refining pills. After putting away his remaining pills, Zhou Yun flew down from the huge rock. He tidied up his clothes and headed towards the alchemy pavilion. Not long after, he arrived at his destination. Before he came here, he had sold his remaining 9 pills at cost price. These 9 pills were exchanged for a total of 2 spiritual stones, one of which was used to buy medicinal herbs. The other one was used to rent an alchemy room. After all this was in order, Zhou Yun began to prepare to refine pills. Elsewhere, Ji Ha was walking around in boredom. Zhou Yun had left after he had displayed his strength, leaving them behind. Qin Xiu, who Ji Ha had been clinging to, had also left. Qin Su claimed that he was summoned by his tutor. After Qin Xiu left, the few of them also went their separate ways. Due to the huge blow they had suffered this time, the few lackeys appeared disinterested when they parted ways. As for Ji Ha, who was sent flying by Zhou Yun, he was even more depressed. He couldn't figure out how Zhou Yun's strength had suddenly reached the 5th layer of qi cultivation. All of them were well aware of Zhou Yun's aptitude. He was absolutely trash. His innate ability and talent were extremely limited. Otherwise, how could he fail to make any breakthroughs in the past 2 years? However, in just a few days, he had already reached the 5th layer of qi cultivation. He mumbled, either he has been hiding his strength, or he has had a fortuitous encounter recently. Ji Ha thought for a while and came to these two conclusions. Of course, he was more inclined to the second conclusion. No matter how much they mocked him before this, Zhou Yun had always been unmoved. So why did he suddenly attack this time? Now that he thought about it, Zhou Yun must have had some fortuitous encounter. After coming to this conclusion, Ji Ha was in a great mood. This was because he knew that opportunities were hard to come by, but they were usually single occurrences. In other words, if Zhou Yun had obtained some fortuitous encounter to reach the fifth layer of qi cultivation in such a short period of time, he might be stuck at the same layer for the rest of his life. Ji Ha thought of this as he walked past an alchemy room. He was about to continue on his way when he suddenly stopped and turned his head. He was a little dazed when he saw Zhou Yun's figure in the alchemy room. Zhou Yun is refining pills. How was that possible? Ji Ha found this interesting. He quickly took out his voice transmission stone to inform Qin Xiu of this matter. Chapter 7. I can't keep a low profile even if I wanted to. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. I can't keep a low profile even if I wanted to. After Ji Ha informed Qin Xiu, he turned to look at Zhou Yun in the alchemy room. The corners of his mouth curled into a mocking smile again. The strength that Zhou Yun displayed earlier had indeed shocked him. In fact, he had to admit that Zhou Yun's strength was no longer below his own. However, he felt relieved after finding out that Zhou Yun had obtained a fortuitous encounter. A person who relied on a fortuitous encounter to barely be on par with him was not worth his time. Now, Zhou Yun was actually delusional about refining pills. Wouldn't that be too far-fetched? In terms of alchemy, Ji Ha also had some talent. He had even become an apprentice in the alchemy pavilion. Although he was not yet inducted as an official alchemist, his talent was recognized by his teacher. No matter how talented apprentices were in alchemy, they still needed a mentor's guidance and experience. Every alchemist was respected on the continent. The reason for this was because alchemists were extremely rare. Their training was extremely difficult. Every alchemist was carefully selected. After that, it required astronomical amounts of medicinal herbs to bring up an alchemist. All forces would spare no expense to rope in any alchemist. Their identities and statuses were extremely prominent. Now, Zhou Yun had no one to rely on and no one to teach him. Even so, he actually wanted to refine pills by himself. If this wasn't wishful thinking, what was? Ji Ha acknowledged Zhou Yun's strength, but certainly not his talent in alchemy. A mocking smile appeared on Ji Ha's face. Not everyone could refine pills. Ji Ha walked into the alchemy room and looked at Zhou Yun, who was busy arranging the herbs he was about to use. Yo, weren't you cultivating? Why did you change to pill refining? He continued, old classmate, pill refining and cultivation are completely different fields of study. Do you have any knowledge in this area? Although I have yet to be inducted as an official alchemist, I've already mastered most of my teacher's teachings. Do you want me to teach you? Ji Ha looked at the diligent Zhou Yun and sneered. However, after he mocked Zhou Yun, he noticed that Zhou Yun did not pay any attention to him and was occupied with his own matters. The latter didn't even look at him. He didn't even lift his eyelids. It was as if he did not see Ji Ha. It was obvious that he didn't take him seriously at all. This provoked Ji Ha's anger again. Just as Ji Ha was about to speak again, he suddenly saw that there were only 3 sets of herbs for qi refining pills on the desk of the alchemy room. He also saw the timer in the room showing a day's rental time. He couldn't help but let out a strange laugh and immediately said, alchemy isn't something that a poor man can dabble in. You dare to come here with only 2 spiritual stones to spend. If you don't have money, then don't act like you are rich. You're a newbie who knows nothing, yet you're attempting to produce 3 pills using these 3 sets of herbs. Is this a joke to you? Which alchemist doesn't fail hundreds or even thousands of times before they succeed? Why don't you listen to me and use 2 spiritual stones to buy some chi refining pills? They will be enough for you to cultivate for a while. Hurry up and leave. This isn't a place for a poor man like you to play in. Ji Ha's taunting had successfully attracted the attention of the people around him. They all looked over towards the room. When they heard that Zhou Yun wanted to use 3 sets of herbs to make chi refining pills, they all laughed so hard that their sides ached. This was especially funny since Zhou Yun was still a newbie and had never come in contact with alchemy before. Someone mocked, I'm dying of laughter. You want to refine pills with just 2 spiritual stones. Do you think we're cooking? Zhou Yun. Wasn't he the lowest ranking outer sect disciple? Is he trying to find another way to stay in the sect since he knows that he can't pass the outer sect disciple assessment? Some of the more observant disciples recognized Zhou Yun and shook their heads. They thought that Zhou Yun was afraid of being expelled as the assessment was approaching. If he managed to make it as an alchemist, he would not need to take the assessment. This guy isn't here to learn alchemy. He's clearly here to gamble. Is he gambling on switching careers from an outer sect disciple to an alchemist? The problem is that you need capital to gamble, a tall man with curly hair stated. Do the 2 spiritual stones he has count as capital? Said a little dark fatty. Do you think they count? The tall man said. Those should not be counted, the little dark fatty stammered, not daring to reply. The conversation between the two was like a crosstalk, causing everyone to burst into laughter until their sides hurt. In the face of everyone's ridicule, Zhou Yun's face remained calm. He was busy with his own matters. He ignored everyone's teasing. Who said that brother Zhou Yun doesn't have money? A crisp female voice suddenly rang out from the crowd. When the voice rang out, everyone immediately stopped laughing and turned towards the voice. This voice. Could it be? No way. Why would she come here? Under everyone's gaze, a cute girl skipped into the room. She was wearing a light red dress. Her skin was as smooth as jade and as white as snow. A white silk ribbon was tied around her waist, perfectly showing off her slender waist. Her long black hair was casually draping over her shoulders, fluttering in the wind. She was holding the arm of another dignified woman. This woman was dressed in white. Her skin was as white as snow and her eyes were as clear as water. When she looked around, she had an elegant and noble temperament. The 2 girls walked into the alchemy room hand in hand. Everyone recognized the 2 of them at a glance. They were both inner sect disciples of Spirit Valley. The cute and playful girl was called Xiao, a new genius who emerged over the past 3 years. She is so beautiful. Too beautiful. She looks ethereal. As soon as the 2 women entered, they immediately caused a commotion in the alchemy room. Everyone present looked at them with infatuation. Their gazes were all drawn to them right now. The crowd stood there like stunned statues. Everyone was too distracted from refining pills with the presence of the 2 women. Who are these 2 goddesses? An outer sect disciple who was unaware of the situation looked at the 2 girls who had just entered and asked in confusion. An inner sect disciple heard the man's doubts and introduced the 2 goddesses to him while staring at them intently. These 2 are inner sect disciples of our sect. Do you see that cute goddess in light red? She's a new genius who's been promoted in the last 3 years. I heard that she broke through the first layer of chi cultivation to the foundation establishment stage in less than 3 years. She's even reached the intermediate of foundation establishment stage. And this woman in white is senior sister Su Wani, one of the inner disciples of our sect. She is also the gentlest and best senior sister in our sect. No one can replace her. When the 2 women walked in, for a moment, everyone was silent and dared not speak. They respected Su Wani from the bottom of their hearts. Brother Zhou Yun. Xiao let go of Su Wani's hand and skipped over to Zhou Yun's side, calling his name sweetly. Zhou Yun looked at the pretty Chower and felt helpless. Now that she was here, he couldn't keep a low profile even if he wanted to. Chapter 8. Unbelievable. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Xiao stood beside Zhou Yun and called out to him sweetly. Her originally angry face with round eyes immediately revealed a sweet smile. Her slightly childish voice was heartwarming. Xiao greeted, Brother Zhou Yun. The people around them were ready to answer her greeting, but realized that they were not being called. In the end, they resisted the urge to make a sound. Everyone present wanted to be on the receiving end of her greeting. Zhou Yun replied, Yes, why are you here? I'm here to see Brother Zhou Yun. I'm afraid that someone will snatch you away. Many people wanted to be cultivation companions with you before this. Xiao said casually. Xiao's words made Zhou Yun laugh. That was in the past. Look at me now. No one will like me. How could that be? When Xiao heard Zhou Yun's dejected response, she frowned and retorted, Brother Zhou Yun is still so attractive. You're even better than were back then. At this point, Xiao's pretty face immediately blushed. Everyone present saw Xiao's embarrassment, and countless people glared at Zhou Yun. All of them gave him dead stares. It was as if they wanted to take him down with them. Looking at Xiao's flushed face, the fire of jealousy in their hearts burst forth. Zhou Yun looked at the bashful Xiao and recalled a scene from their past. He had saved her on his way to Spirit Valley. At that time, he was about to go to Spirit Valley to find a master. Coincidentally, both of them encountered two bandits on the road. He had relied on his strong body to save Xiao. He carried Xiao all the way to the valley. Fortunately, Xiao's talent had caught the eye of an elder of the valley, and they were accepted into the sect. Xiao directly became an inner sect disciple, while Zhou Yun started out as an outer sect disciple. From then on, whenever Xiao could, she would come find him. Zhou Yun was lost in his thoughts when he suddenly felt his sleeve being tugged at. He turned around. He saw Xiao's bright eyes smiling excitedly at him. Her eyes were curved like crescent moons and they were twinkling brilliantly. Brother Zhou Yun, take this. Xiao said in a low voice as she secretly stuffed a small cloth bag into his sleeve. Zhou Yun felt as though a cat's paw was scratching his sleeve. Her dainty hand caused Zhou Yun's heart to itch, and he quickly caught her hand. There's no need for that this time. Zhou Yun stuffed the item back into her pocket. Just as Xiao was shoving spiritual stones into Zhou Yun's sleeve, she suddenly felt her small hand being wrapped by his large hand. Her face immediately turned red. All right, she said. Zhou Yun immediately rejected the cultivation resources that Xiao had given him. After all, she had helped him out a few times before. Although her aid was appreciated, he could not rely on her too much. Furthermore, he knew that Xiao had already broken through to the intermediate of foundation establishment stage. She needed much more resources than he did. The cultivation resources of the entire sect were decreasing. Xiao probably didn't have much cultivation resources left. She might have saved up all of this by herself. She would probably need more. He couldn't continue to be a burden to her. All right then. Xiao pouted with a sullen face. She thought to herself, he must have found someone else, and he doesn't need my help anymore. He thinks that I am annoying. Zhou Yun naturally did not understand her feelings. If he did, he would probably not know whether to laugh or cry at her antics now. He merely turned down her offer. He didn't expect her to overthink this much. At this moment, Su Wani walked over and said, Zhou Yun, how are you? I've always heard Xiao mention you. As expected, you look good. Su Wani waited for the two of them to chat for a while before she walked over and took the initiative to greet Zhou Yun. Hello, senior sister. Zhou Yun quickly turned around and greeted Su Wani. The latter had seen Xiao's little antics and shy expression just now. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that Xiao liked Zhou Yun, to the point that they could no longer be separated. She came over because she wanted to get to know Zhou Yun and see if he was a suitable partner for Qiao. After all, Qiao was like a younger sister to her. She did not want her sister to be bullied. Naturally, she wanted to see how Zhou Yun was. From the looks of it, are you developing your alchemy skills? Su Wani took the initiative to mention pill refinement, bringing their conversation back on track. In fact, she had witnessed the entire process just now. Zhou Yun had no prior knowledge of alchemy, but he wanted to use 3 sets of herbs to produce 3 pills. From her perspective, this was a gamble. This was because no newbie could refine a pill with zero knowledge on alchemy. Therefore, she was not very optimistic about Zhou Yun's chances. Yes, I want to learn alchemy, Zhou Yun answered Su Wani's question with certainty. Qiao said, oh, yes, brother Zhou Yun. We came here because we saw that there were many people here. We didn't expect to see someone mocking you the moment we arrived. Ignore them. Zhou Yun smiled indifferently, not taking it to heart at all. After Su Wani heard his reply, she sank into deep thoughts. She was not optimistic about Zhou Yun's chances. Moreover, Zhou Yun's reputation preceded him. Most of the people in the sect knew that he was the outer sect disciple who had been stuck at the first layer of qi cultivation for a year without making any progress. As she thought of this, she looked at Qiao. She looked meek as she stood beside Zhou Yun. She sighed internally as she told herself, fine. I am just doing this to help Qiao. She was extremely fond of Qiao. Helplessly, she took out a basic-level alchemy manual from her sleeve and handed it to Zhou Yun. Take this book. You can read it when you're free. Zhou Yun took the book in confusion. He picked it up and saw that the book was called Alchemy Classic Notes. Zhou Yun was overjoyed. This was precisely what he needed the most now. She really came through in his hour of need. Many thanks, senior sister. Zhou Yun picked up the manual and was about to open it when a squeal of excitement interrupted him. He turned his head and saw Qiao looking at him in astonishment. Qiao, what's wrong? Su Wani and the others also looked over. Brother Zhou Yun, you've broken through. Qiao's words caused everyone, including Su Wani, to turn their attention to Zhou Yun. His entire body was overflowing with spiritual qi. He emanated an abundance of spiritual qi. This was clearly a state that could only be achieved at the 4th or 5th layer of qi cultivation. Only then did everyone notice that Zhou Yun had already advanced to the 5th layer of qi cultivation. Everyone present was shocked. Didn't the rumor claim that Zhou Yun was stuck at the 1st layer of qi cultivation for a long time and couldn't break through? What was going on? Everyone stared at him in disbelief. Chapter 9. Who will be at the bottom? You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned. They were shocked to their core. No matter how one looked at it, the power that Zhou Yun was currently emitting was definitely above the 5th layer of qi cultivation. This could not be faked. What happened to him being at the 1st layer of qi cultivation? Many of the disciples at the 3rd and 4th layer of qi cultivation turned sullen immediately. If Zhou Yun was no longer at the bottom, then who else would be at the bottom? Was it them? Everyone was shocked to the point of being at a loss for words. At this moment, their minds were blank. This scene also caught Su Wani's attention, and her mouth opened slightly. A trace of surprise flashed across her beautiful eyes as she looked at Zhou Yun. She was also in disbelief. It was because of Zhou Yun's reputation in Spirit Valley. She had long heard that he was at the 1st layer of qi cultivation. She didn't pay much attention to him back then. Later on, because Qiao often mentioned him, she even made a trip to check him out. I remember that 3 months ago, he was still at the 1st layer of qi cultivation. He showed no sign of improvement, Su Wani muttered to herself. Her beautiful eyes looked at Zhou Yun with a hint of disbelief. 3 months ago, he was still at the first layer of qi cultivation. Now, he had actually reached the 5th layer. Had he been hiding his strength, or did he train himself up with his talent? Su Wanyi didn't continue to ponder about this matter. Either possibility was astonishing. She cast away all these thoughts and looked at Zhou Yun again with a hint of curiosity in her eyes. What kind of person was he? She was a little curious. Everyone will eventually improve. Isn't that normal? Zhou Yun patted Xiao'er's head, brushing it off like it was nothing. His action stirred up the emotions of the crowd. Zhou Yun did not care about their anger. He turned his head to look at the timer in the room and realized that half an hour had passed. Time was precious, and he could not afford to waste a single second. After all, time was money. Zhou Yun quickly bade farewell to Su Wanyi and Xiao'er and started preparing to refine the pills. Senior sister, Xiao'er, time is running out. I have to practice my alchemy. Su Wanyi glanced at the timer in the alchemy room and nodded understandingly. Xiao'er pouted her little mouth and looked at Zhou Yun reluctantly. Her pitiful expression drew the sympathy of everyone. All of them had strong desires to comfort Xiao'er. However, as soon as they stepped forward, they were forced to retreat by their senior sister's gaze. After Zhou Yun bade farewell to the 2 girls, he entered the alchemy room and closed the doors and windows. When everyone saw this scene, they were all extremely jealous. Senior sister and Xiao'er were both goddesses. If they were Zhou Tun, they would be more than happy to chat with the 2 goddesses. It would be a great privilege for them to be able to get close to the 2 goddesses. Yet, Zhou Yun actually thought that they were in his way. Was he actually focusing on refining pills at such a time? Was he still a man? He really didn't know how blessed he was. Ji Ha had seen everything that had happened since the start. He quickly took out his voice transmission stone to inform Qin Xiu. During this period, he had already called the latter 3 times. He didn't know what Qin Xiu was doing, but he still hadn't come over. Ji Ha knew that Qin Xiu had a crush on Xiao'er. From the current situation, it seemed that Xiao'er was very close to Zhou Yun. Why aren't you coming over? Ji Ha held the voice transmission stone tightly as his heart burned with anxiety, but there was still no reply. On the other side, in the cave of the elders of Spirit Valley, Qin Xiu was kneeling on the ground. An old man in a dark robe was sitting in front of him. Qin Xiu, you're about to achieve a breakthrough. Don't go running around for the next 3 months. Calm down and cultivate in seclusion. Prepare for the assessment which will happen in 3 months. Do you understand? Qin Xiu raised his head and replied, yes, master. The person in front of him was none other than his master. Moreover, he was an elder of Spirit Valley with high standing and power. He naturally listened to his master's words. Stand up. Qin Xiu stood up and looked up at his master. His master advised, you must train hard over the next 3 months and try to break through to the foundation establishment stage. Only then will you have the confidence to seize the top spot in the assessment. Only by seizing the top spot will you have the chance to participate in the Secret Realms trial with the others. If you fail, you'll never have another chance. Do you understand? I know, master. Qin Xiu nodded in acknowledgement. Looking at his disciple, the old man nodded with a satisfied look and then took out a bottle of vitality pills from his sleeve and handed it to Qin Xiu. Cultivate well. Qin Xiu looked at the bottle of pills and felt a burst of excitement. He didn't expect his master to place so much importance on this assessment that the latter would even give him a bottle of vitality pills. The vitality pills were the best medicine for those below the foundation establishment stage. For cultivation at the Qi cultivation stage, it was of great benefit. It could replenish spiritual Qi and strengthen one's foundation. It also had the most powerful ability, which was to purify the spiritual Qi in one's body. It could increase the chances of a cultivator advancing to the foundation establishment stage. The purer the spiritual chi of a cultivator, the higher the chances of them breaking through to the foundation establishment stage. In the outside world, these pills were highly sought after by rogue cultivators below the foundation establishment stage. Many thanks, Master. Qin Xiu looked at the pills in his hand and knelt down to the old man again to express his gratitude. Go. The old man stroked his beard and nodded. His master thought to himself, my hopes and dreams are all on you, so don't let me down. Qin Xiu walked out of the cave of the elders, his eyes were burning with ecstasy. With these vitality pills, he didn't have to worry about not being able to break through to the foundation establishment stage. He was in a good mood when he felt the voice transmission stone vibrating. He took it out. As soon as he took it out, Ji Ha's voice was transmitted over. Bro, Zhou Yun is actually refining pills. Do you want to come over and take a look? Ha ha ha. I'm about to die from laughter. Bro, why aren't you here yet? You will miss Zhou Yun in action. Hurry. Qin Xiu couldn't help but smile when he heard Ji Ha's words. Not everyone could refine pills. Bro, Qiao came to the alchemy room, and she's with Zhou Yun. Senior sister is also here. What? Qin Xiu was originally immersed in laughing at Zhou Yun. However, when he heard that Qiao was with Zhou Yun, his smile instantly faded. Ji Ha's message wasn't over yet. Why aren't you here yet? Qiao and Zhou Yun are talking and laughing. I wonder what's going on. Hurry up. Ji Ha's voice sounded more and more urgent, and Qin Xiu's face had long turned gloomy. When he heard that Zhou Yun was together with his beloved junior Qiao, he was instantly enraged. He cursed, Zhou Yun, you seek your own death. His expression turned cold as he headed towards the alchemy pavilion. Enraged, he cast aside the words that his master had just said to him. Chapter 10. Alchemy Pavilion. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Zhou Yun was sitting cross-legged in the middle of the alchemy room. The room was small and there were only a few items inside. In front of him was a cauldron that was connected to earth fire. Next to the cauldron was a preparation table. It was a stone table that could withstand the heat of the flames. Below the cauldron was earth fire needed for alchemy. The temperature of this flame was much higher than that of the flames commonly used, and it also had many other wonderful uses. If one wanted to refine medicinal pills, the majority of alchemists wanted to use earth fire to refine them. Zhou Yun sat beside the cauldron with 2 alchemy manuals in his hands. One was the Alchemy Classic Notes that eldest senior sister Su Wani had given him, and the other was a simple guide to alchemy that he already had. After comparing the 2 alchemy manuals, he immediately noticed the difference between the two. The book that Su Wani gave him was most likely the real alchemy manual. Compared to the Alchemy Classic Notes, the one he initially had was like a child's book. They were not on the same level at all. After the comparison, he immediately picked up the simple guide to alchemy and was about to throw it into the cauldron in front of him. Just as he was about to do so, he hesitated. What if he could exchange it for some money? He then told himself, forget about it. I won't throw it away for now. He kept it because he was too poor now, he didn't dare to throw away anything he had. After putting away the simple guide, he took out the Alchemy Classic Notes. He flipped to the first page, and just as he read the first word, the system's voice rang in his mind. Activating the God-tier enlightenment system. Zhou Yun immediately entered a profound state of enlightenment. After entering the state of enlightenment, he flipped through the alchemy manual with one hand as his other hand slowly began to simulate the actions of refining pills. The actions involved were very simple. He only had to grab the herbs and put them in the cauldron. However, the rhythm was hard to grasp. The art of refining pills was both mysterious and ordinary. It was simple yet complex. This was an extreme contradiction. Refining pills only involved 2 movements. Yet, he felt that they were extremely difficult to accomplish. In his opinion, he would never be able to master it if he did not rely on the system. As Zhou Yun continued to attain enlightenment, he slowly began to understand the profundity of alchemy. As he read more, he still only performed 2 actions, grabbing and putting the herbs into the cauldron. However, there were a lot of particulars that he had to focus on, such as the rhythm of his breathing, the strength of his breaths, his state of mind when refining the pills, the strength of his grip, and so on. All of these had to match the rhythm of the pill refining. A slight difference would render the pills ineffective. Worse still, the cauldron might explode. After a long time, Zhou Yun finally managed to refine his first batch of pills. After a while, Zhou Yun suddenly snapped out from his enlightenment. When he opened his eyes, he realized that the pills had been refined. Zhou Yun exclaimed, "The art of alchemy is really mysterious. It feels completely different from cultivation." Zhou Yun wiped his forehead. He was already covered in cold sweat. He turned his gaze to the cauldron. At this moment, the flames in the cauldron had already been extinguished. All that was left was the residue heat of the flames. He sniffed hard, but he couldn't pick up the scent of the pills. In the past, the qi refining pills he received would more or less give off a trace of medicinal fragrance. This time, there was no medicinal fragrance. This situation made him a little nervous. My future depends on this. Zhou Yun closed his eyes and prayed for a while. Then, he placed his hand on the lid of the cauldron. Sizzle. Zhou Yun opened the cauldron and white-hot waves of smoke immediately spewed out from inside. When the white smoke dissipated, Zhou Yun was instantly stunned. He was shocked when he saw the pills in the cauldron. There were 12 round pills lying inside the cauldron, each emitting dazzling light. Furthermore, the surface of each pill was exceptionally smooth. They could be considered perfect. From the book that Su Wani had given him, Zhou Yun had learned some basic information about pills, such as their grade. Generally speaking, the grades of pills were all divided according to the degree of smoothness of their surface and strength of their medicinal fragrance. The smoother the surface of a pill, the more perfect the pill was. A perfect pill would not emit any smell. The medicinal strength of such a pill would not be lost in the slightest. The qi refining pills that he had previously received looked round. However, on closer inspection, one would discover that there were some small pits on the surface of the pills. Moreover, the pills emitted some fragrance. The fragrance that was emitted meant that the pills were losing their medicinal strength. On the other hand, each of these 12 pills was flawless. No matter which direction one looked at them from, they were all extremely smooth, without the slightest bit of damage. Furthermore, they were scentless. They were simply perfect. Zhou Yun looked at the 12 pills in the cauldron. His heart was filled with excitement. His entire body was trembling with joy. Then, he looked up at the roof at a 45-degree angle and said indifferently, "If the heavenly path did not give birth to me, Zhou Yun, then the world of alchemy would still be in a dark age. Who else but me could do this? Who else has the ability?" At this moment, Zhou Yun had a strong urge to rush out of the alchemy room and shout to the people outside, "No offense, but I just want to say that you are all trash. Why isn't brother Zhou Yun out yet?" At this moment, Xiao was bitterly waiting for him to come out. "I wonder how he is," she said as she pouted. It was not easy for her to come to see him. She still hadn't updated him on her current situation. Previously, she did not visit him like she used to because she was trying to break through to the foundation establishment stage. After she had broken through to the intermediate of foundation establishment stage, she had quickly come out to see him. After learning that brother Zhou Yun might be expelled from Spirit Valley, she had rushed over to the alchemy pavilion. She was going to get him some pills that could help him achieve a breakthrough. She did not expect to run into him and find out that he had broken through to the 5th layer of qi cultivation. This surprised her greatly. She believed that Zhou Yun's achievements would definitely not stop here. Why isn't he out yet? I still have a lot of things to tell him. Qiao's eyes were fixed on the alchemy room where Zhou Yun was. When Su Wani saw this, she teased, "Weren't you planning on buying some pills? Why are you still standing here? Or do you only wish to buy pills from this shop? But I don't think he's produced them yet." Su Wani chuckled after she finished speaking. This caused the rest of the crowd to stop and watch them again. Senior sister. Qiao's face immediately turned red when she heard this, and she quickly hugged Su Wani's arm and shook it. "You know that I am doing this for brother Zhou Yun." Qiao's coquettish tone made everyone present gasp. It took a while for everyone to come back to their senses. For a moment, they were entranced by her voice. He. You're lying." Su Wani pinched Qiao's face. The people around them were also eager to pinch her soft cheeks. At this moment, a gloomy-looking Qin Xiu reached the alchemy pavilion.